What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today on Tuesday, November 9th. I hope you all are having a phenomenal Tuesday, as I am as well. You're going to see me on a different Locked On podcast tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But, of course, I am here to host my usual podcast, the Locked On Pirates podcast, here on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast, you can find me. Come see my wonderful face on YouTube at Locked On Pirates. Make sure you come and subscribe and like. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers before the season starts next year or before the new year if you guys want to go a little crazy. But again, I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about some other outfielding options in free agency outside of Andrew McCutchen that could be on their way to Pittsburgh if the Pirates do decide to take a look. I have 6 names down, so we'll see which ones you guys like the most. And we're also going to revisit the 2021 MLB Draft in its entirety. Not in its entirety, but we're going to focus on what some of these guys have done already and why Baseball America thinks already that this draft class has a ton of potential moving forward in the next couple of years. Also, thank you so much for making Locked On Pirates your number one listen and your first listen of the day every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. And with that said, let's get right into today's episode.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The music hits. It's Tuesday. The music on the podcast is always fun. Hopefully it always gets you up and dancing and everything, no matter where you're listening. If you're listening at work, if you're listening at home, if you're listening when you're going to sleep, I don't care. I love that you guys are here. Thank you so much for always tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast today. I am, of course, your host that does the most, Ethan Smith. Again, it's a phenomenal Tuesday. Hopefully you're not playing your Christmas music yet. Mariah Carey is waiting in the wings after Thanksgiving, so just give her some time. But as mentioned on the in the intro today, of course, thank you all for making me your first listen of the day every single day, Monday through Friday, through the month of November. I believe when we hit December, we will be going back down to 3 episodes a week, which will basically be Gary Morgan Mondays, Adam Bittner Fridays, and then Wednesday, and then breaking news whenever it comes out about what the Pittsburgh Pirates are doing and seeing where they are moving along in the offseason. And speaking of the offseason, I have a list of guys today that I took a close look at that could be really some guys that the Pirates could go after as far as outfielders heading into free agency. Free agency, of course, is live. We've already seen the Pirates do some things, picking up Greg Allen and Eric Hanhold, Wilmer Defoe and Shea Spitzbarth, and some other guys have elected free agency from the minor leagues. So we'll see what happens with those guys as well. Pirates have re-signed Yuri De Los Santos as he was not on that long list of stuff as well. So the Pirates are making some minor moves right now. No big trades or anything to report. No rumors as of right now, besides, Brian Reynolds being in the news every day as a potential trade guy, even though he's not going anywhere. But the outfield, as I've said on this podcast on numerous occasions, is probably the biggest staple right now of what the Pirates need to be looking for. They need some outfield depth heading into 2022. Yes, I know they have Kanan Smith-Njigba and Cal Mitchell and Travis Swaggerty and even maybe a Tucupita Marcano or an O'Neal Cruz, depending on how they treat those players, waiting in the wings. But you really want to still have a serviceable right fielder alongside Ben Gamel and Brian Reynolds to make this outfield in 2022 better than it got in 2021. Because in 2021, this outfield took a major step. I mean, you have Anthony Alford, who struggled a lot, but played well in AAA, but struggled at the major league level. Dustin Fowler never panned out. And I mean, Yoshi Tsutsugo has been fine out there as well. And he's actually going to be the first name that I bring up here as an affordable option in the right field spot. He played well in Pittsburgh in 2021. I mean, you look at what he did. I mean, he hit 268 with the Pirates. It's very serviceable for a team that really just did not hit the baseball well at all this year. And 8 home runs and 25 RBIs in Pittsburgh. I wouldn't call that like a resurrection of things, but he's definitely played well here in Pittsburgh with his time. And you like to see it out of Yoshi. You like to see that he's done very well. You like to see that you would like to see the fielding improve. Of course, he's more of a third and a first baseman than he is a right fielder, but the Pirates gave him time out there. His fielding is subpar. It's not very good at all. So that's one thing that I would look forward to improving if he does indeed become the right fielder next season, because his bat realistically is something the Pirates need. They need some power dynamic in this lineup. Brian Reynolds, of course, around 20 to 25 home runs, as Gary said yesterday. If he stays around that mark, he's always going to be in the Silver Slugger conversation and the All-Star conversation, but he can't be the only guy on your team that's hitting home runs. I mean, Colin Moran, when healthy, can do that. Gregory Polanco was doing it from time to time, but Gregory Polanco was just too inconsistent. And that's one of the things I want to see from Yoshi Tsutsugo in 2022. If he does indeed come back, he is technically a free agent right now who's projected to hit 219 with 13 home runs in 2022. I think if he does come back, that home run total is too low. I think he could easily get into the 20s if he got a full season in Pittsburgh, depending on what the rules are with the universal DH and everything. And I wanted to go ahead and throw him on this list just because I believe, I mean, technically he's a free agent, and I believe that the Pirates have a real shot at bringing him back, depending on what the market is for him. I mean, a lot of teams might have saw how he ended the season with Pittsburgh, again, hitting 268 with a good amount of home runs and RBIs. And especially American League teams could really use a bat like his on the bench, because then they don't have to ask him to field at all. He's not the greatest fielder at first base or third base either. He's just not a good fielder in general. He's more of a just power bat. And if the Pirates really honor that and say, okay, cool, we're not here to have your fielding, we're here to have your hitting, I could easily see Yoshi Tsutsugo returning in 2022, and we will be following that closely, of course. Another name I wanted to throw out there that I haven't really ever mentioned on this podcast for good reason is Nomar Mazara. He's a former top prospect from the Detroit Tigers. And as you see on the bottom of the screen, if you're on YouTube, he would definitely be a dart throw at the age of 26. Just depending on where he is as a player would be very interesting to follow. Of course, Nomar Mazara did not have the greatest year, 212, 276, 321 stat line. But we've seen it happen before with these guys that were former top prospects that could use a change of scenery. And for the Pirates, realistically, one of those guys was Tyler Glasnow. He turned out to be a very good pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays when it came around and stuff. And now look at him. Now he's very good. He knows what he's doing over there in Tampa, despite having that gruesome injury after all the new rules in baseball, which he says are to blame for that. But Nomar Mazara, I mean, again, can he give you what you're looking for in terms of a player in that outfield spot? That's really what you would be looking for here at the age of 26. Again, he would be a dart throw, and the Pirates already hit on a dart throw again with Ben Gamel. Can they do it again in a guy like Nomar Mazara? That's really the question here. And again, he's only 26, so you'd be getting a guy that's still relatively young. You'd be getting a guy that's played for the Rangers, in the White Sox, and now the Tigers. He's a career 255 hitter too. So, I mean, it's not like he's like a really awful player or anything. He's a career 255 guy. So you really have to marvel at the idea that he could be a very good ball player for this Pirates team if they could kind of tap into his potential a little bit. And you never know, maybe he turns out to be a really good player in the future for the Pirates if they do decide to go that route. I think Detroit may decide to try and keep him here. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to keep him here just because of his age and the fact that maybe he can turn around in Detroit. But you never really know. It just is one of those things that you really have to look forward to and see if they can really tap into his potential and see if they want to throw a dart. I mean, it just depends on what Ben Cherington wants. Does he want to throw a dart, or does he want to get a guy that's established? And the rest of these guys on this list are definitely established players as well. But before we get into those guys today, I want to let you know that today's episode is, of course, brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline.ag, of course, is your place to do all your sports betting during this football and basketball season. College basketball kicks off tonight to add to your betting fun. You can go bet on the NBA and football right now, as all teams are eyeing for the playoffs and trying to get off to hot starts at the beginning of the year. Don't forget to bet on the Pittsburgh Penguins either. Excuse me. The Steelers also won yesterday as well. If you bet the over in the Chicago spread, you would have won that one. I bet the Steelers -7 and under, so I did not win. But if you want to try to go take a stab at winning some money at betonline.ag, make sure you use that promo code locked on right there at the bottom of the screen to receive your 50% welcome bonus. Of course, that means if you put $100 into your betonline.ag account and use the promo code locked on, they will give you $50 of free money to make some money on betonline.ag on college football, boxing, UFC, football, basketball, hockey, and even your favorite Vegas casino games like Texas Hold'em and Blackjack. So you could go to betonline.ag right now where the game starts and make sure you go win some money today. And as we continue to talk about these guys, we went over Yoshitomo Tsutsui, who everybody on this podcast is familiar with already. Nomar Mazara, who again would be a dart throw. Now I want to go to an interesting player that I think would be fun. Leury Garcia of the Chicago White Sox. Now, Leury Garcia has been with the White Sox for pretty much his entire career. He's 31 years old now, played very well last year, 267, 335. 376 slash line over there in the Chicago White Sox area. And of course, the Chicago White Sox made the playoffs, lost to the Houston Astros, did not get there. But Garcia was a very big part of why that offense was a very electric offense. I mean, you had Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu, Yohan Moncada, all those guys there, Luis Robert, sorry. And Leury Garcia was a big part of what they were doing as well. And as you see, he's a utility and pure contact player who can play any position but the catcher position. And the Pirates love that kind of stuff. Adam Frazier was kind of like that in his time here before he was traded. Tucupita Marcano, who will be coming up next season, I would assume, is also like that. Diego Castillo could also be a potential player that could be in the mix to be a full utility guy as well. But Leury Garcia, he would give you basically a staple right fielder to have in the right field spot. And if you want to give your middle infielders a day off and then throw maybe an Anthony Alford or a Yoshitomo Tsutsui out there in right field, Garcia can move into the infield as well and just give you a really good sense of versatility that the Pirates are missing. And if you look at his 2022 projections, he's projected to have a 262 projection in 2022. The only thing is with him, and a lot like Mazara, I do think it's pretty tough to see him leave the White Sox just because he's been there for so long and had a lot of success over there in Chicago. So we'll see if Garcia is on the Pirates' radar. He's definitely on my radar. He may end up being a little bit too expensive for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I am here on the affordability count. None of these guys are getting max deals. That's really where I'm kind of at with it. And the Pirates don't have a ton of money to guaranteed to anyone at the current moment. So you never really know what they could do here in the coming days and months in terms of stuff like that. So Leury Garcia, I would definitely throw him on the list as well. I also am just in love with utility players. I love utility players, especially like a Jurickson Profar, who I was really hoping was going to leave the Padres and the Pirates might take a stab at, but it looks like he's going to stay in San Diego. And then if we move on, you have Brad Miller. Brad Miller, of course, a left-handed outfielder who just hits for power pretty much over there in Philadelphia. And realistically, the thing is with Brad Miller is you got to just kind of bear with some of the stuff that he does. He does have a high strikeout rate, but left-handed power bats notoriously have been phenomenal in PNC Park. And that's really where you have to look at what you would be getting from Brad Miller here. Of course, Brad Miller, already an established big league player, 32 years old, 227, 321, 453 slash line in 2021. He had 20 home runs this year. That is his projection for next year as well. And I think the importance of getting another 20 home run guy in this lineup would be very, very big for the Pittsburgh Pirates alongside Brian Reynolds. Because to me, a Ben Gamel, Brian Reynolds, and Brad Miller outfield would not be very terrible. It would be actually very good to me. I don't think Brad Miller is going to garner a lot of money either. I know he is a strong power bat that can give you about those 15 to 20 home runs a year. But there's other guys on the market like that as well that are younger and garner more time as well as considered to being a starting outfielder. So Brad Miller, I think he could definitely be on the Pirates' radar as well. Again, you look at what he's able to do. You just have to live with the strikeouts. But again, as we've mentioned before, look at the likes of Pedro Alvarez, who is a strong left-handed power bat here. Josh Bell was a switch hitter, but when he was a left-handed hitter, he's hitting him into the Allegheny every once in a while. Colin Moran, you've seen him do very well. Gregory Polanco in his heyday was doing very well as a left-handed power outfielder as well. So Brad Miller would be an interesting 1 to 2 year deal option that you could offload in the second year, I think. And he's a good guy to look a close eye on. Already in the same state, wouldn't be too far of a deal to move for him and everything. So that would be a fun pick as well. Now we're going to skip over my favorite pick just because I think he would be fun. Jock Peterson here is also on this list. Of course, won the World Series. Jocktober went wild in the World Series for the Atlanta Braves. And Jock Peterson, he's a very fun player on paper. You can't go wrong with that. He's 29 years old, so he's already established as well, a 2-year deal, probably 3-year deal kind of guy heading into this 2021 offseason. There's a strong chance he stays in Atlanta after what he did in the postseason, especially helping the Braves win a World Series alongside Eddie Rosario and Jorge Soler, who were all their big pickups at the trade deadline to replace Ronald Acuna and Marcell Ozuna. But Jock Peterson, very interesting player. He would be fun to have on this team for name recognition. Of course, he won the World Series again with the Atlanta Braves after being traded from the Cubs, also a future Dodger. And he's strong against right-handed pitching, but he's terrible against southpaws. I will have to say that. He sees a 237 average against righties and a 208 average against lefties on average. So you would just kind of have to leave him out of the lineup, I would think, against lefties. I don't think that's something the Pirates would probably do. They'd probably just make him the starting right fielder every day, even against lefties. But there's a strong chance that he would just not be in the lineup against lefties at all. Maybe you could see like an Anthony Alford get thrown in there. Yoshitomo Tsutsui could also get thrown in there against lefties as well, because the Pirates notoriously against lefties do struggle. You look at Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, other lefties that they faced all the time, even relief pitching. Josh Hader always kills the Pirates. So getting a guy that would be strong against lefties would be nice. But left-handed hitting against lefties is always kind of tough. And Jock Peterson, again, he might also get a lot of money just because of his postseason output that he had this year. So getting him would be kind of tough for the Pirates, especially considering he won the World Series. It might be hard to see him leave Atlanta. And even if he does, he would probably want to go to a contender like the San Francisco Giants or the Boston Red Sox or something like that, because the Red Sox are losing Kyle Schwarber. And trust me, your host Ethan Smith would love to see Kyle Schwarber in a Pittsburgh Pirates uniform, but I don't think it will ever happen, even though it would be absolutely phenomenal to see. And moving on from Jock Peterson, who, by the way, is projected to be a 234 hitter in 2022 around his average against righties, we move into one of my favorites that I would love to see be here, and that is Mark Canha. Mark Canha out of Oakland. Of course, we already know all the stuff going on with Oakland. If you don't, they're trying to build a new stadium right now. So there's a lot of talk that Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and a lot of that core may be not in Oakland anymore as they try to save money to build a new stadium. Just some business in baseball that happens. But Mark Canha is a free agent from Oakland. He averages about when he's healthy. He's had low years like 2020 where he had 5 home runs, and I believe 2014 and 2015, or 2015 and 2016 where he only had like 17 combined home runs over those 2 years. But he did also have a lot of injuries in those years as well. But when he's healthy, he hits about 17 home runs a year. That's something that you would really like to see the Pirates take on. I mean, Mark Canha is just a phenomenal hitter. He's a strong power hitter, 231, 358, 387 slash line in 2021. And that was actually a little dip from his career. His career, he's a 244 hitter. So a 244 hitter who averages 17 home runs a year. I think that's something that Ben Cherington would pounce on immediately if it's affordable. Mark Canha, you could see him also go to a contender as well, but I would love to see Mark Canha be here, be the right fielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates, or even move Gamble to right and then Canada left, depending on how they want to situate it. But Mark Canha, I think he'd be a phenomenal acquisition here for the Pittsburgh Pirates. You look at his 2022 projections, he's projected to have 18 home runs and a 241 average. I would take that all day, every day of the week. I think Mark Canha, again, of the guys that I've listed outside of Yoshitomo Tsutsui, who I already know about, I think Mark Canha would be the funnest player the Pirates could pick up here among these players that were mentioned. And 2-year deal for Mark Canha. You could sign him to that 2-year deal. It'd be really nice to just pick him up and make that happen. And then just, again, you could offload him when Kanan Smith-Njigba or Travis Swaggerty is 100% ready. That's all you have to do. That's really what this would all be about, is any of these guys you could sign to a 1 or 2 year deal, preferably a 2, let them play through the 2022 season. That way you're letting Travis Swaggerty, Kanan Smith-Njigba, those young outfielders develop, and then trade them off maybe around the deadline in 2023 to get some extra prospects, and maybe their value is still there. But that is basically the list of the guys that I had today. You never really know what you're going to get out of those guys yet. That is a very big question mark. But it's very likely that you see some stuff that you like out of those guys. And I mean, of course, I don't see the Pirates going after any of the big names like a Schwarber, like a Rosario. I don't see them going after any of those guys. If they do pick those guys up, it would be very nice, but I don't see them doing it. Again, thank you guys for joining today's podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan, or follow this podcast at Locked On Pirates. And as we move into our final segment today, we are going to revisit the 2021 MLB Draft. Now, of course, that was one of the big points that we had this season with the Pittsburgh Pirates having the number 1 overall pick and drafting Henry Davis, the catcher out of Louisville, with the number 1 overall pick. Kind of surprised some people. A lot of people thought they were going to go get Marcelo Meyer or maybe even Jordan Lawler before the season started. Kumar Rocker was a consensus guy. Some people wanted the Pirates to go get Jack Leiter. Jack Leiter wanted a lot of money, as you did maybe notice. So getting Henry Davis on a lower slot obviously allowed them to go get guys like a Bubba Chandler, like an Anthony Solometo, like a Lonnie White Jr. This draft was very good for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Baseball America actually did something today talking about the upside of this team. And again, as I've mentioned already, Ben Cherington did a phenomenal job with this draft. He just really did. And the point behind why this draft was so successful, again, is because what they did not spend all their money on their top pick, and that's what I would expect them to do again here in 2022, where I believe they have the number 4 overall pick. It's either number 4 or number 5. But I would really expect the Pirates to do kind of the same thing. Just build a very strong core here. With that first pick, go a little under slot, get some higher guys in the lower rounds. That's the whole point of why you do this. Like, you do this whole thing so that you can build up the farm system with a lot of good players rather than just one good player. And, the Pirates have to make this kind of thing work. And, of course, it's way too early to talk about the 2022 MLB Draft. But when you look back on the 2021 Draft, a lot of these guys did very good in single A, like Henry Davis was doing very good in Greensboro before he did suffer that injury that ended his season. Bubba Chandler and Anthony Solometo have seen some time. Bubba Chandler, very interesting to see what the Pirates decide to do with him as a two-way player. As of right now, I think they're focusing on him as a position player. He could end up being a pitcher. We'll see what they decide to do with him there. And realistically as well, the Pirates in this draft class, I mean, I talked about it a lot when it came to what they did. I mean, their first 4 picks were all guys in the top 38. I mean, you can't go wrong there. And again, not maybe all 4 of those guys don't pan out, but I think Henry Davis is definitely a lock to pan out. I think he's going to be a very good player. I think he's going to be able to learn from Jacob Stallings whenever he does come up. That'll be very nice to see him come up and make some things work. And 21 of their picks, 19 of them signed. I mean, that's really what happened here. Of course, you get Bubba Chandler, as I mentioned. You got Matt McLain. I mean, you got a lot. Well, not Matt McLain. You got Lonnie White Jr. Lonnie White Jr., by the way, was a very interesting one because a lot of people definitely thought he was heading to the Penn State Nittany Lions to go play football. He ends up joining the Pittsburgh Pirates instead to get some money. I didn't really blame him there. But Bubba Chandler, by the way, that kid has a really good head on his shoulders. And their final top 100 draft prospect they signed was Braylon Bishop, the guy out of Arkansas, who kind of got lost in translation just because of all the big names that were ahead of him for the Pirates. But Braylon Bishop also signed as well. He's going to be a very good player. He was around 14 pickup, and he was very nice to see. And 20 teams also spent over their MLB draft bonus pool this draft, the Pirates, of course, being one of them. The Pirates and the Marlins spent every penny they could. So basically with the draft and the way they did it, you're allowed to exceed your draft thing by 5%. So if you spend 100, you have to spend 100%, but you're allowed to exceed it by 105 to 105%. Pirates did that, but of course, 2 or 3 years from now, I think you'll really start seeing the remnants of this draft class. Revisiting it again, I still give it an A based on what I've seen on paper, based on what I've seen, you know, like based on what I've seen in terms of what they've been doing in the Pirate system already, especially next year. I'm going to be covering a lot of that heading into the 2022 MLB draft. I'm going to be covering these guys a lot and what they're doing at the lower levels of the minor league system. And that's pretty much revisiting it. I want to know your guys' thoughts on the guys that I mentioned today in terms of outfielding options that the Pirates could have, from Nomar Mazara to Mark Hanna. I also want to know what you still think about the 2021 MLB draft. Do you think the Pirates made the right decisions in the 2021 MLB draft, or do you think they should have went a different direction? With that said, make sure you go follow this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pirates. You guys have been smashing the follower button. We're over 700 followers now over on Twitter. Thank you so much for that. You can also follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan, where I talk about the Steelers, the Pirates, the Penguins, the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Los Angeles Clippers all the time, and just some other things as well. You could follow this podcast on YouTube. You could follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, basically wherever you can find your podcasts on any major network. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you all so much for joining, and I hope to see you all on the flip side tomorrow, as I will also be on another podcast tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But we will still be here for Locked On Pirates on Wednesday, November 10th. With that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the flip side. Bye, guys.